I have a call and response meditation today. If you'll turn to number 729 at the back of your book. I'll read the Roman font and you can read the italic marked response. That's 729. The winds of summer. You and I and all of us blew about with the winds of summer.
Following the sun in different ways of freedom and play.
Finding rest in the cool stillness of shadows, and moving to the slow heat-struck rhythms which turned the long hours of summer into light.
Now is time for gathering in. We come together at this time and in this place on the bridge of autumn.
Summer is fading backward into memory, and winter waits in snowy brilliance.
We meet with eagerness and delight, meeting one another for sharing.
We have joys and sorrows and hopes to share, questions, things we care about and want to help make better.
Things that we would like to understand, ideas waiting to be heard.
Today we are together in gladness. Once more, the special community that we call our church.
A community of all ages that sings its songs, tells its thoughts, asks its questions, and searches together with courage and love.
So today is our annual meeting, which means that after this we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about budgets, and we're going to talk about how we want our church to go forward and who we want our elected officials to be, and why we want them to be our elected officials, and what we want our elected officials to do for us because we don't want to be elected officials ourselves. So, I figured with all that entails, it'll go as fast or as slow as we're going to make it happen. Karen Antel asked me a couple of weeks ago if I'd do a sermon that discussed why we named the rooms in our building the names that the rooms in our building have. And so I figured today would be a great day to discuss how we came up with the names for the different rooms in our building and why we have them as those rooms. Figure it'll be a short sermon, and once we're done, we can set up tables and figure out what we're going to do about our budget. So, let's start with, the name of our church is the West Wind Unitarian Universalist Congregation. And the reason that it's the West Wind is because the west winds have historically been considered favorable winds. Winds that blow from east to west. They bring the spring and summer. They're warm. They're supposed to be the entree into new ideas, fresh good thought, rebirth, regrowth. And so when we combine the two churches together, so is it 5 years now or 4? Come on.
It's 4.
4 years ago, West Wind seemed like a good way because we're bringing in a breeze of change. Okay? And so, all of our individual rooms in our building have been given names that have to do with wind. I think this is interesting because as Unitarians, we're pretty good about making wind. So, if this is our church, you're going to have to bear with me on this one. That's the kitchen, which is named the kitchen because that's where we get food. Here's our hall. This is a room. This is a room. This is our church foyer there. This is a room. And that's a room. There's a room. There's a room. Okay. And then over here, these are the restrooms. Once again, self-explanatory. Okay. We call this room the sanctuary. It's the fourth room in the building that didn't get a wind name. And we call it the sanctuary because this is a place where we come to remove ourselves from the world, to recharge, to regenerate, right? Now, the first room that is named after a breeze or a wind is called the Scirocco room. Okay, so you can say Sirocco or you can say Scirocco, but they spell it with a C on the wall. And then if you go and look it up online, they say the normal spelling was without the C, so that people quit saying it wrong. Sirocco room.
Is that a wind?
It is a wind. Good question, Marge. That is a wind that blows across the Sahara. It is extremely hot and dry. A lot of people complain about its allergy properties. As it hits the Mediterranean, it creates giant tropical storms that sweep across the Mediterranean and create a lot of damage. And then when it gets to Europe, it starts to die down and just becomes rain. Lots and lots of rain. This is the rain that falls mainly on the plain in Spain. You've heard about that? This is the one. In Greek, well, in the original Arabic, it's called the eastern wind. But in Greek, that same exact wind was called the nodus. The east wind was the nodus. And he was the destroyer of crops, and he was feared because of the violence of his rage upon the world. The Sirocco room is where we have our open discussions. That's hilarious. Nobody else thinks that's funny? The hot wind that blows across the Sierra to meet the mild climate of the Mediterranean, where it creates turbulent storms that rain down their wrath on the world. And they meter out about Europe and have a lot of nice rain in Spain, of course, mainly on their plane. See? We have people come in with a lot of hot wind to meet the people who don't have a lot of hot wind, to struggle and fight for what is right. And then by the end of it, we're like, that's kind of nice. Okay? Next, we have the Taiping room. The Taiping room, so this is kind of our front door here. You come down the hall and hook around the corner. This is Taiping. Taiping is the Chinese word for great wind. Now, while that might seem humorous, it is in direct reference to typhoons. And for a long time, they thought the word typhoon came from an Italian Arabic derivative, but it turns out that Taiping is where typhoon comes from. And the Taiping wind, the Taiping is originally from Cantonese. Okay? It's considered good luck. Taiping, the mythical creature in China, is a man who was covered in tiger fur with a tiger tail and a man's face. And he is good luck. So, when the Taiping hurricane, typhoon winds come in full of destruction and craziness, they also bring good luck. Because out of destruction rises, something positive. This is our book discussion room. The book discussion room, in general, the open discussion room, and I call it the open discussion room as opposed to the TED Talk discussion room, because calling it the TED Talk discussion room makes me feel like we're promoting TED Talks. And there's other things that happen in that room besides that specific thing. Boy, that was fake. But you understand, it's open discussion. We'll talk about anything. Oh my gosh, whatever. The book room, they talk about the book. They bring the book, they read the book, they discuss the book.
Sometimes.
It does get windy in there. And here's the reason I think it was referred to a typhoon. They try and stay on the path, but it is a great wind. Okay? So there we go. There's those two rooms. Now, we're going to talk about the Vind Blair room. Oh my goodness. Try and pronounce Icelandic after years of never using it. This is this room here. B-O-I-D-B-L-A with an E-R. You can also spell it with an I with a couple of extra dots on top of it. I don't know what makes it easier to say. But this is a breeze that is referred to in a wide variety of Icelandic mythic stories. Now, when you read those translated Icelandic mythic stories, it just says breeze. So finding a Vind Blair myth is hard. Because when you put Vind Blair into the thing, basically it says Icelandic word for breeze. There we go. That's where we put our toddlers. They go in there because they're the beginning, right? They're the little breezes that are going to work their way up to vespers. There we go. Whirling dervishes. Well, I guess unless you teach them, and then they're whirling dervishes. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Zephyrus room. The Zephyrus room is here. Zephyrus is the god of the west wind in ancient Greece. That is where we put our young children. Nope, dang it. I'm the wrong room. Oh, sorry, this is not the Zephyrus room. That's the Chinook room. This room right here is the Zephyrus room. Okay. The one right back here with the green walls, where we have the young kids. They're not toddlers, but they're not like little preschoolers. Some of them are older than preschoolers. Those in second grade. Anyway, the young kids, they go in that room. That is where we have the Zephyr, and it's a reference to the west wind again being the warm spring breezes, the summer breezes, the growth. So we've got them out of the toddler, whirling dervish area, and we've got them finally on a path to growth and development. Just like God, Zephyrus the one, he was a vengeful God. He was, however, a very attractive, feather-winged God, in which many people think the image of angels came from. So if you see a Greek urn with an angel on it, it wasn't an angel, it was Zephyrus, and he was about to smite somebody for taking this guy. So it worked. He was a smiter. Okay. Now the Chinook room. This is Chinook. I thought that was interesting because not only is Chinook a word that is specifically referring to a particular type of wind that moves across the continent of the United States, it is also the name of a tribe of Native Americans from the northern Pacific coast. So, the Chinook winds are references to what is called snow eaters. It is a warm breeze that comes across the Pacific Ocean, hits the Rocky Mountains, drops a lot of rain, continues over the Rocky Mountains, and then melts everything in its path. Apparently when the Chinook winds come through the Dakotas and Montana and move up into Canada, they can melt inches of snow in hours. So they're called the snow eaters. And it is a warm wind that moves from across the Pacific Ocean. Now, the Chinook people believe that in the beginning, the giant thunderbirds came down to earth from heaven and laid 5 eggs. And out of those 5 eggs were born all of humanity. Okay? And so, I don't know how that relates specifically to that room, but that's where we have the middle-aged kids. And that's where the kids are beginning to learn more about who they are as people. They're kind of going from little tiny people to this is the point where we start to give them ideas as to how they can look at worship, how they can develop their smaller minds into bigger minds. It's a growth potential place. There are eggs, right? We're cracking them open and bringing them back to humanity. See it tied around there? You didn't think it was going to happen. Okay, the last room is the Frigga room. And I know I'm mispronouncing that word because that, I think is Brazilian. And my Portuguese is as rusty as my Icelandic. Okay. So the Frigga room, this is awesome. So in South America, when they get a nor'easter, okay, everybody knows what a nor'easter is here, right? A giant blizzard that swoops down from the Arctic. So when a giant blizzard swoops up from the Antarctic, it's called a friggin' storm. And when a friggin' storm shows up, it's cold and it's wet. The temperature drops dramatically and it moves through the Amazon basin, releasing lots and lots of rain, but also bringing lots of much-needed air conditioning. This is what happens when you leave your doors open during the summer. It goes down south and hits South America. I think it's interesting because in the description that I read of it, it said a friggin' is like a nor'easter, but backwards. So it goes from the south up towards the equator. And that is the room for our teen room, because the teens are cool. I think that's all we got to say. So, these are the reasons that we named our different rooms in our building after different things. And why we named our entire congregation the Westwood Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We blend together. We have winds from all over the world. We have ideas and thoughts from all over the world. We speak words that are hopefully all in English, but those of you who don't speak English, I hope are getting some benefit out of this. I don't know what it would be. Anyway, we're from all over the place. We all come together in one place to reside, to worship, to be together, to be community. Thank you for being a community.